Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here, welcoming you to the December early access episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a normally a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. These early access shows are kind of a reward for our patrons every month. They get kind of a month early access before we launch this out to the wider public. So if you want to get this probably in a more timely fashion, given the content of the first couple episodes that we've talked about. Certainly, you can go support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite for $1 or more, and you get early access, a month early access to these kinds of episodes that are more topic-centric, topic-specific. Joining me, much like we had last month, same crew. It is myself. It is Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, folks? Our
Hello, hello.
nerds. Anyway.
And Frank Bizzani also joining us. How you doing, Frank?
Good. What's up, nerds?
What's up? So if you enjoy what you hear, you are hearing this likely as a Patreon supporter, but you might also be hearing this a month from now, as after we record it, as we upload it to our normal feeds and stuff. So if you like what you hear, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And as I said, if you are hearing this outside of the early access window, you can go ahead and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, and help us kind of make this content, and you get a month early access to hearing these episodes. Speaking of Patreon, I want to shout out our Patreon producer, James L. Thank you for supporting us at the level for the Patreon producer shout out on the monthly stuff like this. So this month's episode, for the first episode we did last month, we talked specifically about Thanksgiving memories because we recorded it a couple days after the holiday. So this episode we're recording here on the December 29th, a few days after Christmas, and it's only seemed fitting that we talk about Christmas memories as kind of the logical next episode. So if you're listening to this come late January or whatever, after this goes live for everybody, we're keeping you in the holiday spirit now that we're well into the new year. But I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off this month. Christmas is always kind of like it's the big one for my family, certainly. We talked a little bit about Thanksgiving last month. When I talked about that, I talked about certainly a more heated experience with Thanksgiving that I've had. But for Christmas, we kind of had our family traditions around Christmas would be Christmas Eve. We would get together and go to church, and then we would all like go back to my parents' house maybe, and they would unwind and chat and stuff, and my sister and I would get to open like one early gift on Christmas Eve. That was usually like socks or something like that. It was usually like a small little thing. And then we would go to bed, and my sister and I, me so certainly more than my sister, I think. I would like wake up super early at the butt crack of dawn and be like super excited to open presents. And so sometimes when my parents, had only gotten to sleep an hour or two earlier after wrapping everything and laying out all the Christmas presents and stuff, when they wanted to sleep in a little bit and say like, no, we're not open, like you guys don't get to open stuff until like 9 a.m. and I was up at like 6 in the morning or whatever, I'd be like, well, I guess I'm watching A Christmas Story on TBS or TNT or whichever channel it would air on.
Hells yeah.
Both.
But there you go. But
TNT Christmas Story all day long, baby.
nice,
Oh,
yeah.
that was a staple for us too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The general like flow of the holiday over the years became like we would wake up, open presents. My parents, like my core family, my sister, I, and my parents would open presents around the tree, and then we'd do like breakfast and stuff, and my sister and I would play with some of our new toys and gifts and stuff for a little bit, and then we would go around lunchtime. We would go over to my grandmother's house and be joined by my grandmother, my grandfather, who I spoke of in last month's episode in Better Times, and then also my aunt. And so like the extended family here in the Phoenix area, we would all get together, and we basically like that was like Christmas round two for my sister and I, specifically, where we would get to open all the presents from my grandmother and my aunt. And my grandfather pretty much always just gave us like an envelope with cash or whatever every year, because he didn't really know us, as I mentioned extensively last month. But and then we would do like Christmas dinner and stuff, and so the specific Christmas memory I want to speak to came probably I don't know 7 or 8 years ago now, where like with that Christmas like archetype in place, we kind of like we had kind of our standard routine for Christmas, and a lot of times like the same kinds of like jokes would get brought up year over year, um, uh, to the point that some years ago, I think it was basically caused because I was in between jobs, and so I didn't have a lot of money to like pay for actual Christmas presents that year. So what I did instead was I wrote the family a Christmas play that was basically um, a, a a play version of our Christmas traditions of opening presents and stuff. And so I'd like wrote a little 10-minute sketch effectively, and I brought copies with everybody, and it was like I basically had everybody play themselves, and we just kind of went through like the greatest hits of like our Christmas stories, and I would have like the little in jokes that happened year over year over year. I would have like each of those kind of inserted into the script and stuff. And the only one that like immediately jumps to mind was this one from like when I want to say when I was like 7 or 8. My grandmother went to Europe and brought back a gift for my aunt that it was this like sweater, and it was my grandmother got it because it had like all sorts of like tacky little gems and stuff sewn onto it. And my aunt opens it, and the first thing that happens when she shows it off to everybody is I read the word big because that is what the gems are spelling out. So just like it's just this gaudy little sweater that has big written on it, and basically it became a recurring joke for years and years and years that my grandmother had got my aunt this sweater calling her big, as like so it became like a fat joke over the years, and we would constantly call back to it and be like, hey, remember when Grandma got Aunt Pam that big sweater? And so like I threw that in as a reference within the script that we're reading at the Christmas kind of celebration. And it went over like gangbusters. Everybody played their part to a plum, and everybody got like all the little references we were throwing in there and all sorts of stuff. I think I threw in a joke about how like a page into the script or whatever, I basically because I was always the quickest one to unwrap everything. Like I always plowed through, just like raced through unwrapping all my gifts, and so I would always be like the first one done, and then I would basically be on like giving out gifts to everybody else duty for the. So I think I threw in a reference there of like a page into the script. I'm done. Okay, and kind of continued on with the play and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Kind of taking this what otherwise was like a a frustrating and hard time for me, given that I was like I wasn't employed at the time, and was like as somebody who is like I love being philanthropic and I love giving to people, being able to give gifts and stuff. I it frustrated me that I wasn't able to give that way in or that year in the ways that I would have liked to have given gifts to everybody. But the idea that sprung out of that lack of like financial resources turned into a nice little Christmas memory for my family, and I think everybody still looks back fondly on that play. I'm sure I could probably find it on my like old computer files somewhere. I probably have it saved as like a Word document somewhere. But yeah, just print it out, like wrote a little 10-page thing up, I think, and printed out copies for everybody and had everybody act it out over at my grandmother's house that Christmas. It was a nice little joyous Christmas memory. Kind of hitting all the Christmas buttons in my family. So that is like the quintessential when I think of Christmas memories. That's what I like look back on, instead of like the thing like every year we would get like a big gift. Like my sister and I got like a computer, a new PC one year, and remember that being like an iconic moment of like we walked out into the game room, and it had like we had a Windows 95 screensaver like scrolling across the screen saying Merry Christmas, Trevor and Jamie, and that was like the big gift that year and stuff. And so we had those kinds of moments, but this little like family play that I wrote for everybody is certainly I think one of the the big Christmas memories in my life. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys and with anybody listening. Nice little joyous thing, as the like a direct contrast, I think, to my my Thanksgiving memory from last month, that was much more explosive and heated and stuff. This was from happier times, and this so my grandmother's help or my grandmother's health as a kind of the epilogue to that is has faded in recent years, and this was the first year I think that we didn't go to my grandmother's for that second part of the day because she's been in hospice care recently. So we basically did everything this year over at my mom and dad's house, um, and it was a still a nice time, much more laid back. My grandfather did not attend, as he is still very much on the outs. I think I did, so I don't do like the Christmas Eve stuff that they do anymore, but I think my grandfather joined for that, and then basically Christmas Day was the family all coming together. Um, so yeah, it was still a nice little thing, but the not having that extra element of like going over to my grandmother's, while great because my grandmother's house always like reeked of
Mhm.
smoke and everything, so I did not miss that. It definitely felt like something was a little missing this year, just as a result of the changing times and stuff. But yeah, that was my Christmas. Frank, let me throw it over to you. What Christmas memories do you have?
Yeah, like I always loved that time of year, like especially growing up. Like that was when like I like like things weren't always like the best, but that was when the time I always remember being like, well, those were like the time that everything was like happy and like everybody was just like comes together and you get all these things that you don't normally have. Like always loved like the music and the movies and just like the time spent together. And the thing that I remember kind of like looking back on it a lot though was always like, especially from being a kid perspective, was like get just being excited to get gifts and like like what were you gonna
Mhm.
get?
Hmm.
And when I remember back on it, the one of the things I always remember being excited about was like games and like game consoles because that was like the only time of year you were gonna like get that stuff. And I like even for like the first console I ever got was for Christmas, and it was the GameCube with the year it came out, and it had. I also got one of those like 13-inch CRTs with like a VHS player built in at the bottom. You guys know what I'm talking about? It had like
Yep.
handles you could carry.
Yep.
And I basically got that like as the two things that I probably got other stuff, but that's like the only thing I actively remember from that time.
Hmm.
And then I remember like just being excited to like put it together and my dad trying to like read the instruction manual for how to put a GameCube together even though it's like two wires like and the TV and everything and like I don't know I had that same setup for like forever and even with like the PS2 and then eventually the 360 like I still had that same TV because those things were like indestructible
Yeah.
until it unfortunately fell off of a high shelf and shattered so I would still have that thing to this day.
Not quite indestructible, but yeah. Interesting. 'Cause I have a specific GameCube Christmas memory too, where it was like years after it had already come out, I think, because it was my sister got me a GameCube when it had slipped to like the $99 deal that they did one year, or like at the end of I think the GameCube's lifestyle, where it's like, hey, $99 gets you the GameCube. And my sister got it for me, which completed my set at that point of like the PlayStation to the original Xbox and now the GameCube. Um, and so yeah, that was a nice little like Christmas gift as well, that year, getting that like surprise. And that because that for me that was the kind of thing that like Santa would give us or something like that. So the fact that I was getting it from my sister was like that meant the world. Because that would be what like she was still in high school I think when like she got that for me. I think it was like my I think it was my first year in college. Or like so it would have been like the first time I was like away from the house and coming back to the house for Christmas. So it was a nice little gesture from her. Very much appreciated. Um, yeah, very cool. Any other like notable holiday memories that you got? You
I
remember
mean
like what games you played with the GameCube?
Yeah, I should have said. So this is again like remarking, I guess, to our list show. But the first game I ever got with that GameCube the same day, it was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. And like that was the first game I ever had with that console. And I also will never forget the feeling that many of us had where I played through like half the game that afternoon and my mom's like, "All right, like you have to come for lunch or whatever." Go to save, no memory card.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is a memory card? What is that? Like my parents had no idea. So like my mom had to go to Best Buy like a couple days later. So for like a week I basically just couldn't save my game.
Did you just keep it on the
I'm
entire
I'm
time?
having flashbacks because
I turned it off. I just basically kept starting over. Like
when we did Trove Talk, was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 the game that you talked about on that one?
for no, not for we talked about Mass Effect is my favorite, and then for like the nostalgia one we talked about like some dirt bike game.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember that. Okay. Because I feel like I'd heard this story before,
I may
but it
have
might just
mentioned
be
it.
that it is such a like iconic story of that time of not having the memory cards.
But yeah, that's where like I think it's funny that like especially going back to that that's like such an iconic thing that so many people had, and I definitely had the same thing. And because the last consoles that my parents would have bought before that for like for my sisters would have been cartridge based, like they had no idea.
Yeah.
And so like and what I often wonder about is I wonder why, because like I didn't ask for the GameCube. I didn't know what it was. Like it had just come out that year. So I think they may have just asked like whatever the new Nintendo thing was, or like because we were definitely like a Nintendo household. And like so I don't know if they just asked for that or whatever the hot thing was, but man, like I always talk about too how like that really sealed their fate, because then it was just thousands of dollars in gaming stuff after that. Like that's all I ever cared about. Had no other interests.
Yeah. Because
And
how
then
old would you have been when that came out?
so I was like at the time when the year it came out and I got it at Christmas, I was like 4, and then I would have immediately turned 5 like that January.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking it up. That was that it released in Japan 3 days after 9/11, which
That's a
is
weird
like
thing to
weird
say.
to think that. And then like yeah, November 18th, 2001 was the American North American release date. So yeah,
That's
that
because
was
yeah, I remember it was like 2001, and then like I got Tony Hawk with it, and then I also got Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2.
mm,
Like I
yeah,
basically
like
had the launch lineup.
I'm thinking I didn't get that until 2003 or 2004 myself, which is like earlier in the lifespan than I was anticipating. But also I'm realizing that that wasn't like that was one of the like the GameCube did not have the greatest like lifespan in terms of Nintendo's catalog because they were getting trounced by Xbox and PlayStation with the PS2. So um, I guess like them cutting down the price to $99 that early on was just like, hey, yeah, we clearly lost this round to PS2, but please buy our thing so you can buy our games too.
And then man, like it has such a good library though, and I guess it is partly nostalgia. Like that was definitely, like I said, it's the first thing I had out the gate, and I remember so many like mornings with just like Wind Waker and Sunshine and just even Luigi's Mansion or whatever, like all these amazing games. Like and uh the one of the other things I remember too from kind of like later on was when I also got my 360. I think it was the year after it came out. I think it was like 2006, maybe like 2007 when I got it, and it was also Christmas, and that was one of the ones where my sister and I had woken up early, and it was kind of like what you were saying too, like like us as kids would just kind of like wake up extremely early and just want to start going through stuff like while my parents were trying to sleep because they were up really late the night before wrapping and like putting this stuff together. Like they were always kind of doing it like that night, and they were always like trying to sleep and we were trying to drag them out of bed. And I remember basically going through the boxes, and I was always really good at like shaking a box and being like, this is exactly what is in here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember basically picking up this really long box and kind of like shaking it, and I eventually also looked at the back and you could like stretch the little bag it was in and I could see what it was, and it was Guitar Hero 2 for the 360. And I was like, so I was so excited. I didn't know where the 360 was, but I eventually basically opened that. So I got like this brand new like 360, and it came with Forza Horizon 2, and I think it was like Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And
Nice.
then I also the game they got me was Guitar Hero 2 with like that controller that has like the triangle shape. I don't know how else to describe it.
I mean, I only remember the like the guitar peripherals.
Well, and that's what it was, just like one of the guitar peripherals, but it wasn't like the one of the ones that's kind of shaped like a circle guitar. It was just kind of like one of the more jagged ones that I thought it was
Oh,
like
okay,
really cool.
gotcha.
And
Okay.
I definitely was like, that just kind of set during that was like the peak Guitar Hero, and I just like that was also an amazing time, like to kind of join in on the 360 and kind of get game achievements, which was like brand new, and it kind of hooked me in on that, and then just playing all the kinds of amazing games from there.
Very cool.
But that's always basically, I guess, the end cap. Like that's always kind of like what I remember is some of like the best memories is just getting like that new consoles, those new hardware, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly. I mean, these days I just treat myself to all those things, but I basically am like, yep, that's so like my Christmas gifts to myself next year are going to be the Xbox Series X and the PS5, and it's like because growing up, my family was much more like we didn't get things when they came out. We got them years later as like kind of used versions or something. Like I remember um, uh, distinctly my dad coming home with the my PlayStation 1. I don't think it was even Christmas time or anything. It was just like he bought it off somebody that he worked near down at like Phoenix Park and Swap as like a used thing, and he came with like a handful of games, most of which I never even touched. It was basically just like, oh, this is I can play
Hmm.
Final Fantasy 7 now, yay! Um, and yeah, it was a rarity that we would get like the consoles when they came out, but once we had them, like Christmas was definitely a time for like when we would get the games that we were going to be playing for the next 6 months. Um,
Something I feel bad about from back then, and I don't know if you guys like relate or have like an opinion on this, but when I was like really little, I would always like they would always be like, okay, you go first because you're young and like impatient. And I would like open everything kind of like Trevor was saying, like really fast. And I'd be like, oh, these are my new video games. Great. And then I'd be like, okay, bye, have fun. And I would just go play video games while everybody else opened the rest of their stuff.
mhm.
Like I did that for like multiple years, and I really distinctly remember that. I really distinctly remember it with Simpsons Hit and Run. Like I got Simpsons Hit and Run, and I was out of there, and I was just playing Hit and Run all
I mean, that makes
afternoon.
sense. Hit and Run's a great game.
Nice.
But I feel bad about it, like in hindsight. Like
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like I should have stayed and like had that family time.
but that's
Like
the difference between being a shitty teenager and being a like responsible adult.
Yeah, it was a similar thing for me in that like I didn't I we were not excused like while presents were still being opened, but like as soon as the last presents were opened, like my sister and I would go play with whatever we'd gotten and leave like clean up to my mom and dad.
Nice.
Or like my mom would clean up while my dad would make breakfast or whatever, and I'd be playing Chrono Cross on on the PlayStation or something like that. Um, and then that would continue over to my grandmother's house, where like um, I would take whatever version of Game Boy I had, and like that's where I would take like if I had a new Game Boy game, I would take it over and play on my little handheld thing, and like whichever one we had that year, and I would largely like because my grandmother and aunt, while I love them, they were not the ones that would buy us like the games and stuff. So the stuff I was getting from my grandmother and aunt, I knew was going to be more like clothes and stuff like that, that I didn't care as much about. I've got a newfound appreciation for those kinds of gifts now as an adult. But I would very much be like, cool, cool. But I'm going to be playing my game on like on my grandmother's steps or something like that, and be distracted from the conversation that everybody else is having. Um, and that I have a similar feeling to you, Frank, of like, yeah, I could have been less of a dick, and I could have like just waited to play the stuff a little bit later when I wasn't having like supposed to be spending time with the family and whatnot. But um, still, good fun memories. Always always nice getting video game stuff around Christmas, because then you got like especially like as a kid when you've still got like another couple weeks off of school before you have to go back. It's like cool. Now I know what I can do for the next 2 weeks, where you can just play that stuff and you've got like that dedicated time. It, I saw a tweet going around the other day, of somebody saying like, who the fuck thought it was a good idea to like go from having like a month off around Christmas as a kid to like having to work as an adult. Like, who thought that was cool? That's a stupid idea. We should not do that. And yeah, it's like, and that's something I think about. I'm thinking about it less right now as I'm in between jobs again. This year and this Christmas, where I can just kind of like spend a lot of time playing video games and stuff. But if I was having to be back at the office, the Thursday after Christmas or something, like I would have been otherwise, it is like, yep, that definitely cuts down on like the the time I get with games these days. But also on the flip side, I did not get a single video game this Christmas because my family knows that, hey, when I like really want those games, I just go and get them myself, or I pick them up like when they come out or when they're on sale. Like, I know when the sales are. I don't need to worry about telling them to like pick me up something. So like the the gift giving like standards have shifted over the years, and so now I am like quite happy to get Christmas sweaters from my sister because I'm like, hey, that'll help keep me warm when I go to PAX in a couple months in Boston in February. So I will gladly take that, and yeah, I've been enjoying the games that I wanted to enjoy for the last couple months. I didn't have to wait until Christmas as an adult, so I can appreciate
I,
that that
I'm with
distinction
you
as
on
well.
that.
And basically I'm like, hey, if you want to support my habits, just give me the money and I will go ahead and turn those into the games that I want to get when I get them. So
It's those sweet PSN gift cards that just never expire, and you can wait for like a sale.
yep. Well, very cool, Frank. Thank you for sharing your holiday memories, your Christmas memories. How about you, Cameron? We you've teased us a little bit that you have I think a more akin to my story from last month, maybe, where like because Christmas isn't like a isn't your big holiday. So
Yeah,
so hit us with
as
your
as we mentioned last month, my big holiday is 100% Thanksgiving.
yeah.
I'm a Thanksgiving kind of guy. It's interesting growing up. So my brother doesn't like turkey, and I don't like ham. So for Thanksgiving we have turkey. On Christmas we have ham, and that's to appease both sides of this argument.
Hmm.
Nobody else really cares. Uh, so I have one distinct memory, and if it's related to video games, it is because I remember. You guys remember when the Wii came out
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and how
Yep.
how it was like hectic. Everybody was trying to find a Wii. It was absolute insanity. People were like paying like hundreds of dollars over MSRP over on eBay, and my dad. So anyway, I'm thinking I'm like, you know what? I'll like save up my money over the next year or two and buy like a PS3 or an Xbox 360. Was actually not thinking Xbox 360 at all. I was thinking just a PS3, which was telling you a lot because of how prohibitive that price range was for me.
Hmm.
For everybody, really. That was part of its problem. Uh, so I was like, it costs too much money. I'll like, there's still stuff coming out for the PlayStation 2. I'll just keep playing PS2 games for a while. And Christmas morning comes around, and mom and dad are just like, Cameron, that one says for the family, but why don't you go ahead and open it? And as I'm opening it up, my parents to this day wish they had had a camera on me because as I opened it up, it was a Nintendo Wii, and it was this like incredible moment of just like, wait, what? Like a Wii, like Wii, what? And I was just flabbergasted because I was like, these are impossible to find right now. How'd you find one? My dad had found a somebody who was basically selling their pre-order unit that they got from like a GameStop or something. They were selling the pre-order unit for like basically the same price, and my dad found it. He sniped it there. Like the buy it now off of eBay was like, like $40 extra, $40 or $50 extra, and so he did. Paid an arm and a leg for shipping and handling. And then like when all was said and done, also was able to get from that same seller, Twilight Princess, and so like in like one, and also like an extra Wiimote, I think. Did it come with two Wiimotes or did it just come with one?
I believe it just came with one, I think.
Yeah, so we had an
Yeah.
extra Wiimote as well bought. So two Wiimotes right out of the gate with a Wii, and just it was awesome. Like it was just that got set up, and that was like the thing everybody was focused on for the rest of the day was like that we had a Wii, and we booted up Wii Sports, and man, let me tell you, everybody was making Mii's. Everybody was like, everybody was doing this. It was like the thing that we did all day long, And man, oh man, was it just like this amazing! It really was a family gift. Like everybody in the family used it, and then it bricked. Like
That
less than
same
a
day?
week later. No, like less than a week later. It was just defective unit, and so they sent me a cardboard coffin. This is what, like, at the time everybody was talking about, like, you know, the Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death, stuff like that, and they talked about like the kind of the box coffin they send you that you had to put your unit in and then send it back to them in. Nintendo was the first company that I knew that did this. They actually, in the box, the quote unquote box coffin they sent me, they actually had another Wii in there. So they replaced my Wii, no questions asked, and then just like I sent my old Wii back, and it was, you know, that was it. I will say, I have wonderful memories of that Wii and that Christmas. I'm not a big Christmas person, just overall. I'm a bit of a humbug. I've always been a bit of a humbug ever since I was like 9 or 10. It's definitely, I don't think it's anybody's surprise that I entered a prepubescent existential crisis around that time frame, where I became very aware of the concept and eventualities of death and existence on a less grandiose scale, but like, or less grandiose like way of describing it, but essentially I became very aware of my own existence around that at a prepubescent age. Or I guess I was like I had entered puberty, but instead of it being like, I don't know, I feel funny. It's I am filled with nothing but complete and existential dread because I realize that the like life is meaningless because in the end we all just die anyway. And as a religious person, I was like, we all just die and go to heaven anyway. So what's the point of life? And it's like a very grim thing, grim outlook
A little
on
bit,
that.
yeah.
Yep. So needless to say, I was a moody child. Anyway, so like, and then also you have like the pre-conceptual abrosexual awakening of like my existence and like the complications that would therefore ensue also around that time, like starting to begin. So like it was the complications of my life really started adding up. And so Christmas time also became, so it should be noted that Christmas, I said it earlier off the podcast I think, but Christmas is to my family the most important time of year. My family's religious, but on top of that, my family has a ton of traditions around Christmas that my parents made because my parents both love Christmas. At one point in time, my parents owned more than 60 nativity sets.
Wow. That is a lot.
My parents, like, and my dad had a cabinet by our front door, that literally the bottom, like, it was it was a cabinet that had a mirror, as well as just like kind of a flat desk area, and then underneath was like glass cabinet for display. And in that glass cabinet was like more than 20 like glass or ornamental, like very pristine nativity sets, not for people to play with. Or just like there was just, that was something my dad collected. It was not a lot of, but if he saw one he really liked, he picked it up. His favorite one for a very, very, very long time was an African. So my dad spent a couple years in Africa trying to tell people about Jesus, and doing like just, you know, good works over there, just helping people out. And he came back and my dad has a deep, deep, deep love for the people of South Africa and what is now Zimbabwe, but when he was there it was Rhodesia. He was there during the Rhodesian Civil War that turned it into Zimbabwe. He was at one point in prison because they thought he was a member of the CIA. My dad has just like this deep love of the people there, and so one of his favorite nativity sets is actually a very special carved, like it's very non-descriptive as far as like it's very like no faces drawn on or anything, but it's of like just this beautiful little African themed nativity set, and it's one of his favorites because he loves it and because it reminds him of his time in Africa and the people that he met there. So like to say my parents don't not only love Christmas based off of that, my parents, this is probably the biggest reason why I hate Christmas. I hate decorating for Christmas. because my family owns, and before there were fake trees that were like reasonable, my family always got 15-foot plus trees. The fake tree my parents own is about an 18.5-foot tree. You guys know those big,
What
like,
do you even do
multi-gallon...
with that? Like, how does that even fit anywhere? You guys have like crazy vaulted ceilings?
We did in our old house. We had
Okay.
one room that had a crazy vaulted ceiling that went up to the very top floor. It was an open area that extended both floors. So I lived in a 2-story house that was built in like the 1940s. Like it was one of like it's a very old development area in like what was one of the first residential developments in Mesa, Arizona. It is like the house is a like was clearly one of the model houses that was originally built. And then on top of that, it had so like there's the front entryway opens up to what is essentially a living room that goes where it goes from ground to ceiling. So we're talking 20-ish feet in the air. So it's less vaulted ceiling and more of a like this is one part of the house where like the ceiling goes all the way up to the roof. And so we had this massive tree, and you think, man, how would you decorate it? And I'll tell you how we decorated it, all by hand, all with different ornaments, because my parents owned so have you guys ever seen like what a 20-gallon drum is? Like or a 20-gallon like a 25-gallon like tub, plastic
Um,
tub.
yeah, I can guess the size of that. I like my default goes to like a 55-gallon drum, but yeah, I can guess
Yeah, and
basically half that.
instead of like a barrel, it's like this plastic tub
Yeah,
with a removable top on it. It's all
yep.
plastic, and you just carry it like it has these 2 handles on each side, and you just carry them. My family had 12 of those, and they were all filled with ornaments.
I feel like my family has two or three's worth. So
Yep, my parents love buying ornaments, and not just the standard ornaments. They have a lot of those, but they also love like the one-off little ornaments that are specially made.
mhm.
And my parents, over their 45 years of marriage, have like over the course of at that point it was like 35 plus years of marriage, had accumulated that many ornaments. Every morning before school, I had to hang 200 ornaments, and every day I came home from school, I had to hang 300 ornaments. And if everybody did 500 ornaments a day, we were able to have the Christmas tree looking ready probably by the 22nd or the 23rd. That was then followed up by every Christmas Eve my parents throw a dinner and a basically like a nativity reading. It's a Christmas Eve nativity program that my parents run. And it's not like a very big pageant thing or anything like that. It's very small, very focused, and it is just it is a slog. It is a slog to get through because it used to be like 2 hours long, and I hated it because I didn't. Because also I realized early on that Jesus wasn't born in December.
Mhm.
Jesus was born in the spring, and the nature of Christmas is it's a rebranded pagan holiday of the winter solstice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't you tweet something out to that effect not too long ago? Just a reminder, like,
Oh no, it was when oh what was it? It was actually a pretty good tweet because so I was at so I have nieces and nephews now because I have 3 older siblings and 1 younger sibling who all have kids. And let me go ahead and go to my Twitter. But anyway, so like I realized this early on and I was like, huh. So why do we celebrate in Christmas? Oh, it's a pagan thing. So it's like it's not really that special. It's just a rebranded thing.
yeah,
Like people
I've got it pulled up. My reaction when my extremely religious father asks what Christmas is actually all about, and I'm doing my best not to blurt out the pagan origin of the holiday, and then it's a Jim mugging from The Office gif.
Yep. It's his looking down, trying not to say anything mugging that he
Yeah,
does.
avoiding. Yeah, it's from the moment where he's avoiding Not Pam, the
Karen.
Rashida Jones character.
Yeah, Karen.
Karen, yeah, he's avoiding her like confrontation.
Yep. That is 100% like that was like my feeling because it's like and that's been the case for years. But um, it is a matter. So like for me, I guess like what is a highlight for my family that my family likes to bring up is the one year I tried to take on the Christmas Eve program myself. The goal of this was to make it around 15 to 20 minutes. I succeeded. However, all anybody remembers is in order to put like the Christmas like hymnal carol stuff into like a way that everybody could read it and have it with them, I went ahead and printed lyrics from an online version of the song that I thought had all the lyrics and music to it. I don't know if you guys know this, but not Silent Night. I forget which one of the carols it is. It might be Silent Night. There is a alternate version used in like an old Catholic songbook that is where I pulled this from, where it makes reference to the womb and uterus of Mary. So it's like a third verse on a song, and that all of a sudden starts getting everybody's reading that, and they all stop. And here's the thing: I wasn't there because I was installing a TV at my aunt's house as a surprise Christmas gift. So all I know is I come home and they're like, "Oh, Cam, what's this about the Virgin Mother's womb, or the Virgin Mother uterus?" And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, on your program, like that." Well, first off, my dad was angry because he's like, "I can't believe you put that in there." And then like, "You knew you wouldn't be here for that." I was like, "First off, I didn't know I would not be here for this, and second off, I don't know what you're talking about." And they showed me, it's like, dang, I really should have taken the time to transcribe this instead of relying on the lyrics. So my family looks back in that in jest and gets a good laugh about it. And now there's a new compromise where my parents found a nativity program that they really like, that is all in like children's book form, and is only about 30 minutes. And so I feel comfortable with that. So I also usually practice Festivus. I have my own Festivus pole.
Nice.
And when I started working at a company where I realized my manager was super into Christmas, he convinced everybody on our team to decorate their desk for Christmas. And about a week out from Christmas, he came to me.
That's asking for some legal issues, but okay.
Well, he said it's a holiday themed. So he's like,
Yeah,
I don't
okay,
like, you don't have to do anything specific to Christmas. I just want you to be like, throw in some colors. So some people like, they're like non-denominational, and so they were like, well, I just want, I'll just use some bright colors and we'll enjoy that. And like, so people did stuff, and I was the only person who didn't decorate their desk. And so a week out from like the holidays, he pulls me aside. He says, "Hey, some people are feeling like you're not being part of the team with this. A lot of people have put in a lot of effort to decorate their desks, and they feel like you not decorating it is you trying not to be a part of our team. And it'd be really great if you could just like do just something. Like, you can do anything."
Which again, here I would still argue is like legally questionable.
I worked in call centers, Trevor. Your legal
I know.
legal means nothing to call centers. They do what they want.
Yeah.
Like if the legal practices of a call center are constantly questionable.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the corporate. It's like it's the filthy corporate underbelly of capitalistic society is call centers. Like, I've worked in places where they turned off like half the lights in the building to save money on power. Like, it is not great, including some lights in the bathroom, to the point where it was barely lit. Like, he was barely able to see in there. Safety hazards galore. I digress. So he was like, yeah, you should just like put up something. He's like, once again, it doesn't have to be holiday themed, or it can be like anything. Because one person decorated their desk with Batman stuff, and it's like, cool. And I was like, all right. And I went home and I thought to myself, I'm like, what should I do? And then I look over in my corner of my house.
Just copy
and
that and be like, I don't know if you heard, but according to the song, Batman smells Robin laid an egg. That's what
There
I'm
you go.
celebrating here.
Yeah, that's actually, he quoted that. He's like,
Nice.
he also said like, my Jesus, like my Batman is better than your Jesus, which was a whole like, that guy got so many HR complaints. I don't know how he kept his job longer than I did. Like Like, he was also like a sexist, racist piece of garbage too. So,
Lovely.
but I was like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and I was like, huh. And I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I'm living in a place where like I'm not decorating at home, so I don't have like any decorations from home I can bring. And anyway, I was just watching some Seinfeld, and the Festivus episode came up, and I was like, huh. Here's an idea. So I went to Home Depot. I bought a 5-foot long aluminum pole. I cut off a foot of it, or I had them cut off a foot of it for me. And then I bought I bought one long plank of wood, had them cut off like a portion of it for the small pole, and then another portion in the remaining portion for that, and then I had them drill a hole in it for me to make sure that it would fit the aluminum pole really tightly, and sure enough it did. And I walked out of there paying about $5 with 2 Festivus poles, one for my office and one for home. So I put up the one for home, and then the next day I brought it in, and I put it down, and my manager came over. He's like, hey, so are you decorating? I was like, I just did. And he looked at it. He goes, he's like, what is that? I was like, it's an aluminum pole. And he's like, what are you? I'm like, it's Festivus for the rest of us.
It's time for the airing of grievances.
Yep. He looked at me, nodded, and said, okay then, and walked away. And that was the last. And I sat opposite of him, so he had like this enormous like decorations on his desk, and then like on my end is just like this Festivus pole. And it's like, yes, I have one. So
nice.
That's a fun Christmas memory I have. That's pretty much it. Like everything else is like either like deeply traumatic from my like childhood, or like basically like I was a little kid and it was just Christmas.
Last year, around the holidays, like my office basically did a similar thing, which again, like, got people questionably in some murky waters.
I'm not surprised by your work.
Yeah, they encourage people to, like, oh, we're having a holiday party, you know, feel free to bring anything you want to decorate and celebrate and stuff. And my employee, who, in the time since I got let go, has also given his notice in the last week or so. So so that company is like super
Screwed.
in need for some data administration support, I imagine. There's still one of my old team members left there, but yeah, he did the same kind of thing. He made it a big thing about it being a Festivus pole, to the point that he brought in like a full-size Festivus pole and stuck it up in the room with like the tree and the menorah and all the other stuff they had in there. And he would show anybody who like asked about it. He would pull up the YouTube clip from Seinfeld explaining Festivus, and
Nice.
and so we had a whole like running gag about the airing of grievances and stuff.
Oh, you
I was
certainly
like,
needed it for your work.
yeah, it's one that I like, because I'd never got into Seinfeld. Like, I was completely oblivious to Festivus until like I started hearing it in like the pop culture sense, but I didn't really know what it meant outside of like Festivus for the rest of us. And I was like, okay, ha ha ha, cool. But it wasn't until like he really like focused on the clip of like, here's what it's intended to be and blah blah blah, and here's the airing of the grievances and all the stuff around Festivus. I was like, okay, cool, sure, I get it. It's still a weird sitcom bit for me that has taken on a life of its own because Seinfeld's fan base was so rabid, but whatever.
Oh, I forgot.
But yeah, that was like my
a
introduction really to Festivus.
to Festivus. Yeah, I do have one more fun Christmas story.
Okay.
So one year for Christmas, I got a paintball gun.
Cool.
My brother
How
already
old
had.
were you at the time, and how bad of an idea was that from your parents?
I was 11.
Okay, so
Maybe
bad, very bad.
12. I mean, I had just turned 12, I think. And I got a paintball gun, and it had like a mask. It came with it was basically like a starter paintball kit. And my parents basically said, put my brother in charge of it and making sure that I understood what to do with it. And so my brother had me watch an instructional video. And this instructional video was actually quite instructional. Not only did it tell you how to clean and take care of your paintball gun, but it also told you important etiquette about paintball shooting, in regards to when to shoot, when not to shoot. When somebody doesn't have the mask over their mask over their face, you do not shoot. And makes a lot of basic rules of engagement basically. And one of them is if you get shot, you're supposed to raise your gun in the air and say, "Ceasefire, I've been hit." And lo and behold, so after I watched that video that night, the next morning, my brother is like, "Okay, we're gonna have some fun." And my mom and dad made us promise not to shoot each other with the paintball guns. They just wanted us to do target practice. So of course, being teenage, like him being a teenager and me being 12, we disregarded that rule entirely. We set up some barriers around our like a trampoline that we had, an old trampoline, and basically just started firing on each other. And his best friend was just like hanging off to the side, like basically like refereeing it. And I ducked out to shoot him, and then when I came back up, my brother hit me right square in the chest, like right on the sternum. Here's the thing: we weren't really wearing anything besides t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately, out of instinct, raise my gun in the air and say, "Ceasefire, I have been hit." And my brother stops and he comes over to me, and I just start bawling because I'm in so much pain. By the time we get me washed off, like the pain all washed off of me, because we have to destroy the evidence, or eliminate the evidence that I've been shot. We realized that I'd been welted so bad that I was starting to bleed through my pores on my chest. And my brother just keeps, like, my brother and his friend just keep laughing because I said that phrase before crying. So my first instinct was to tell them not to shoot me anymore. Anyway,
it's the 21st century Christmas story. You shoot
pretty
your eye
much,
out.
pretty much. And then, like, fast forward, like, a week. My mom is my brother's in our shower. My mom wants me to shower because I stink because I'm a 12-year-old boy, and she tells me to use my she'll like, "I'll grab you some clothes, I'll grab you some clothes from the laundry room. Just go ahead and hop into our shower, hop into my parents' shower," which is not uncommon. When you have 3 bathrooms and 7 people living in the house, you trade off open showers as you can. She left the room and I took off my shirt, and she came back in to tell me something, and she just sees, this is like a week later, and I have like a bruise the size of a medium-sized soft tortilla on my chest still. That's like in the center, it's still like dark blue, almost black.
Yeah.
The welt had the busted capillaries had spread. And she freaks out, thinking she's like, "What happened? What did this? You tell me right now." I'm like, I can't, I promise." She said, "Who made you promise?" She's thinking that somebody beat me up. And dropped something, and I'm like, "It was the paintball guns." Josh shot me in the chest with the paintball gun. She goes, "Was he?" I was like, "No, there was 5 feet between us, or probably closer to 10. And so she gets my brother immediately, and just basically just chews us both out so hard. But yeah, that was a fun story.
Yeah. Nice. I think it's a solid enough way to wrap up this month's early access episode. Thank you guys for joining me once again and sharing these stories. It's always nice, especially I also I'll throw one more nice little Christmas memory out there, because both of you are here. I saw on my Facebook a couple days ago, I think, looking back on last year when Frank came out and visited, and the 3 of us grabbed Portillo's.
Oh yeah.
And caught up. So it's nice sharing this episode with you guys once again, and kind of continuing that tradition. Sorry you did not make it out this year, Frank, for the holiday, but I hope your family's doing well.
And that's why I'm super bummed I couldn't make it out this year, because that's what I would have been really excited for us to get back together again, like you were saying, go have Portillo's or something. But we'll just have to, whenever I come back through, that's kind of just always something that's going to happen.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So yeah, thank you guys again for joining. That's gonna wrap this week's episode, or this month's episode up. So let's go around. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you wanna shout out? Not necessarily a plug necessarily, because who knows when people are gonna be listening to this. But anything you wanna shout out in terms of the holidays, or 2019 as an overall general thing as we wind down this year, Cameron?
Sure. I'll go ahead and just start by saying I may have used some strong language about Christmas, about me hating it. And here's the thing: even though I may not be the biggest fan of Christmas, I love that people love Christmas. I love that people are impacted and feel great about doing good and charitable works during this time of year. I think that regardless of your belief system, this is a great time of year to just celebrate family, friends, and Yuletide cheer. Also, about 2019 as a whole, like 2019, I feel is like a continuation of a nightmare timeline that we're living in, where we have both the like horrific things about like what's going on in the world and society in compilation with some of the greatest art that's ever been produced in the last 50 years. Um, I think that that is a. I think that as long as we remember the things that are important to us, uh, and keep those things close to our heart, and stand up when we need to stand up for something, and knowing when to, um, no, and something I want to work on in the new year. I guess can also be like a New Year's resolution
New
thing.
Year's resolution.
I also kind of want my goal next year is to continue this thing that I've been trying to do the last few years, which is I made a joke that being unsexiest comedian meant that from now on I'm just gonna be support my friends and let people love what they love. But I think what I'm gonna do and try to do more this year is even if I don't like something, even if I think something's dumb or silly or pointless, I want to spend this year supporting people in that. I want to help people. Like my goal this year is to support people in achieving their impossible dream. And whether they succeed or not, I want to support them in, their taking on windmills, thinking they're giants. I want to be their Sancho. So that's my goal this year. Is that I'm going to try to be more of a Sancho rather than a Knight of Mirrors. Sorry, I don't know. Don Quixote came to me in a moment.
All right. Yeah, I don't quite follow the references, but I think I can pick it up from the contextual clues. Because yeah, I've not read Don Quixote. You can follow Frank over at Irrelevant Jokes. How you doing? Anything you want to shout out there, Frank?
I guess not at the moment. I'm still just excited to in the new year kind of like get back to making more content. Hopefully, have more free time to make more stuff. I'm still working on Game of the Year, but I guess that's all for me at the moment.
Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J Starkey on Twitter and most other social stuff. And yeah, I just would want to say that like getting back into the game and doing and launching that nerdy site this year has definitely taken a lot out of me in these last couple months. But it's also been incredibly rewarding and incredibly fulfilling. So I look forward to seeing where we go in 2020. So yeah. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, and you can check out thatnerdysite.com for the latest content and all the stuff we are doing over there, including, as Frank alluded to, we'll be having a lot of, in January, we should be having a lot of, like, best of 2012 type of content in terms of Game of the Year, movies. Christian might be doing some anime stuff, TV shows, all sorts of um, uh, best of content over there to celebrate 2019. So, yeah. If you've liked what you heard, as I said at the top of the show, please rate, review, like, subscribe everywhere you can. Certainly helps us out. And thank you to all of our patrons that are hearing this, when it goes live here at the end of December, for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you to anybody else listening after the fact. If you want to support us on Patreon, you certainly can over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps kind of cover the costs of running a little small independent video game and pop culture site. So thank you again, guys, for joining me and sharing your Christmas memories with me. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.